Because you don't have any printer.
Magic.
Yeah.
Okay, let me talk to you about how this is done, of how this is, you know, connecting to anything. So, let me show you our network. We're on a 192.168.118.0 network. That's our network address. And we have a router, which is 192.168.118.2, which is the router for that. We have a server sitting over here, which is 192.168.118. I think it's .11. And then we have a Windows computer or whatever, which is actually DHCP, in the 118.x network. So I mean, it's just sitting there as a Windows computer. So this is your client. We really don't care about that. This router is connected to another network called 172.16.192.0 network. So there's, I should actually draw like a switch here. And that's going up to there, and that's going up to there, and whatever. This is then going to a switch here, which, among other things, has a printer attached to it of 192.168.1. That's not it at all. It is a 172.16.192.117. So this is how our network is configured. So it's a router between two network segments, and so it just you can get other places.
What's a router between two segments?
What's a router?
Are either of those virtual networks?
This is a virtual network.
That's a virtual network.
In fact, let me draw a green around what is virtual. That would be virtual. So the router is virtualized as well.
Oh.
So, what's that?
Okay. I thought that was real.
No, that's a fake router. Now physically, let's see if I can draw this physically. Okay, I'm gonna draw a red over the top of this so it's gonna get really cluttered. But this is my NIC. This is my physical NIC. And it has a network connection to a switch on the 172 network. Then VMware Workstation, the software, makes, let's see, how can I draw this? This and this and this are VMware Workstation software. So in the software, I have a router, which then creates, so this is a virtual router. That's really sloppy. And this is a virtual switch with a virtual machine and another virtual machine. So everything in green is virtual. The only thing physical at this point really is my NIC. And that's sitting over here on this side. Then on the inside of that is a router, a virtual router with a virtual switch in that virtual network environment. So all of this is software, and if you kind of remember, this is my application layer. Applications interact with operating systems, which interact with other physical hardware. And that's where that NIC comes in.
Didn't we have a virtual NIC somewhere?
We have virtual NICs on our virtual server, our virtual machines.
Okay. Oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. So in here, this virtual machine has a virtual NIC,
Okay.
which is plugged into a virtual switch,
Which is
connected to a virtual router,
Okay.
but it has an IP address. It's 192.168.118.2.
That we give it.
That we can change it, but that's kind of configured by default. If I go under VMware Workstation, and that's not VMware Workstation. It is. Yes, it is. I go under Edit, and then Virtual Network Editor. and we're working in the NATed world. So this is my NAT configuration. So I'm telling it to use a 118.0 network. I can change that to something else if I wanted to.
Okay.
Then, oh, I lost my editor. Here it is. Then if I go to NAT settings, so this is all based, this is my network configuration based on using that private network. I go to NAT settings and it says the gateway IP. Gateway is router. What's your gateway? What's your default gateway? What's your default router? It's called different things, but that's the 192.168.118.2. Most networks has this as .1, and you can make it .1. But there's some technical reasons of why they prefer .2, and I've read about it and I've since forgotten about it. Sometimes people like using the last address that's available, so 118.255 is their router. So it's your environment. You can make it. It's just a device. It is a network device. So you can name it anything that you want. Just like your home router, you can do port forwarding because this is a network address translation type network. You have all these addresses on the inside of your network, but you only get one IP on the edge outside. So how does it come back in? That's where you do port forwarding. And that's like way beyond the scope of this class, but if it hits a certain port, you know, say port 80, say you have a web server, say port 80, I want it to go to this device on the inside. Or you can say all my traffic goes to a specific IP address or whatever. So I'm just going to cancel that before we get too in depth. But going back to this example, I can't get to my board from there. This router is like your home router. It's going to do network address translation. So it's going to take all of these IP addresses, you know, whatever these are going to be, and then translate it to my one outside IP address. So my computer has one IP address, just like your house has one IP address. But then using a router with network address translation, I'm able to have 500 computers in my house. And they all get just translated to that one outside IP address. So, does that explain it a little bit? Or is that like muddy it?
That makes sense.
I'm not sure. That's a pretty interesting picture when I look at it.
One question.
Yes?
With how like bridging works, is it possible that I set up that like virtually?
Meaning? So I was able to print, I successfully printed, so I know my printer is working. I'm going to keep my document open. Oh, no, actually I'm not. I'm just going to close this. I don't need to do this anymore, and I don't want to save it. So I have a printer that's ready right now. Now, I'm going to take some look at this. I'm just going to take a quick overview of this. We're not going to make any changes. We'll come back later and do that. But I can right-click on here and go to Properties of this printer. And this is where the share name is. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm sorry, that's the printer name. That's what's going to show up on this list. This is the share name, and you can change it. One thing I do change typically is to list it in the directory. When I say list in the directory, that's for Active Directory. So now Active Directory can refer to it. The Windows computers that are joining the domain have an easier time finding things listed in the directory. It's kind of like the phone book. Am I going to list this in the phone book? So for the things that you want to have in common for everybody, you're going to want to list it. For the other ones, you might not want to. Maybe there's a special color printer for the graphics department that you don't want everybody just to see it. You know, you can let the graphics people still add it, but it's not going to be a general listing type thing. Ports, we're going to come into a little bit later on, but this is where we can share to multiple printers. This is the idea of splitting it to two different physical locations. Advanced, we can tell when this printer is available. So by default, it's always available, but you could say, hey, I only want it to be available from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Or maybe, you know, the graphics people can print in the morning and the marketing people can use our printer in the afternoon. So you kind of, you know, split the difference, and I don't know. By the way, there's just a lot of features and controls under the printer things to manage, and they usually involve like, oh, what if there's like lots of printing and how do we sort this out? I've very rarely encountered that. I've never used any of these management type things to limit or even have priority. Like your job is a higher priority than my job. How often does that happen that you have like lots of documents all the time? It doesn't seem very common, very often, but you know, knowing that it's there, so if you run into a situation, you could certainly, you know, implement these solutions. Color management is just with the color printers. We're not dealing with that. But security, this tells us who can do what. Our main, we have three main features. One is to print. Are you allowed to print? This is hierarchical, so anything that flows down from an organizational unit goes to sub-organizational units. If at some point you want to block it, though, you could deny it. And whenever there's a conflict at one level of allow and another being a deny, deny always wins. You could also deny a specific person in this case. So I could allow everyone, but deny Larry. You know, I don't want Larry printing, you know. So a deny would overwrite his group allow privileges. Manage this printer deals with the printer itself, who can, you know, change the properties of it and things. Yeah, I guess change the properties of it, what we're looking at right now. And the third option is managing the documents. They get to look at the print queue and change the order. They're the ones that can, if there's a job that stopped, can restart it. The user, the person who prints it, can always cancel or restart a job that's been stalled, but only their job. Manage the documents that you do it for everybody. So you can pause jobs, you can reorder jobs. So if you can manage the documents, you can take, you know, the 5th document and move it up to the next to print object, or take the 3rd object and put it down at the 100th spot if there's 100 documents or whatever. So you have the ability to print, manage the printer, and then manage the documents which are in the queue. There's a couple default groups already included. Everyone can print, which is the default. And then the creator or owner can then manage the documents. That's where they can cancel their own job, they can pause their own job, restart their own job, or whatever. And then we're going to come back later and play with this a little bit. Device settings is really based on the specific make and model of the printer, whether it has duplexing or whether, you know, where you're going to pull the documents from or whatever. We're not going to really play with that at all, but just showing you that. So the one thing I did change, though, is under sharing is listed in the directory. So, and I really haven't changed anything else. So I have this printer now that's available for sharing. It's listed in the directory. And now I want to have my computer print. So I'm going to switch over to my Windows 7 computer and I'm going to power it on. And I'm going to go log in as a user. Let's Control-Alt-Insert to log in. Andrew's already there, so I'm just going to keep him. That keeps the profile, but you can log in as any user that you want on your network. So logging as any user. And what I'm going to do is very simply go to Devices and Printers, and I want to add a printer. So I want to click on the little icon that says Add. So I'm going to Start, Devices and Printers, and this is what I got, and I want to add a printer. And is it a local printer or is it a network printer? Well, it's not local. It's not physically attached to this computer, so I'm going to choose a network printer. And when I do that, it pops this up right away. I mean, so it's a share that's out there, it's being published. Hey, that's the printer that I want. And if it's something else, well, no, that's where you can print directly. But this is the ones that are listed, and I can get, so it's like right immediate. So the person doesn't even have to like search or do any weird things. And they click next. Now it's looking for the driver. And it was actually the driver during the install was installed onto the server. And you can install the driver manually, like if you have a special HP driver, or let Windows figure out which one it is. And now this computer is pulling it from the server, not from the internet or anything like that. So you're getting the driver that you chose. And we can even look at that later on about where that driver comes from. the printer name is the printer that we chose with the addition of on 2012-1. So it's this printer on that server, and you can't change it. That's a good thing because we want to know what the printer name is and what server it's connected to. And we click next. And again, this is where we normally do a print test page, but we're not going to. And we click finish. If we wanted to, we could use a notepad document, and that's all we really need to do. So, but this is the process of installing to this one printer. So go ahead and take a minute and install that network printer. So you can get that driver. When I went to create this printer object on the server, it downloaded and found a driver already for it and inserted it in this drivers folder. So in this case, it's an HP 4100 series. What's nice is that this is like the master location then. So I could update this driver. I could remove it and put a different driver on there to force that object and all the people who have that printer object installed to get this new updated driver. So you don't have to go around and update these drivers. You change it here. It's linked to that object the next time it gets deployed or whatever, updated. And actually, it's through group policies. We'll talk about that later on too. It gets the new driver automatically. So you're reducing the driver. If you noticed, the computer, the user didn't have to do anything. Didn't have to, like you didn't need rights to do this. I didn't need to install a driver. Normally, the administrator would have to log on to add a printer, but everyone has access to it. So that's why you can do it. Like if I added a regular printer, like if I tried to add that 172, oops, there we go, wrong one. 172, still 192.192.117 locally on this printer. It should ask me, I don't want to do this, darn it. It's going to let me do it, isn't it? Darn it, it's not supposed to let me do that.
Ask for administrator.
Oh, I probably logged in before as administrator. Shoot, darn it. Okay, remove the device, so I'm not going to do that. So it kept it somehow. I don't know how. Anyway, but you know, you shouldn't be able to print directly to that. Force the people to go through the server. And it's really nice to be able to see that the printer name says on that server, so you know you're not going directly to it. So it's kind of neat to show that. But it's using this driver. So that's what as simple as printing is. I mean, so now that Windows computer can print, and it's printing through the server to that physical printer. You know, maybe I will just practice and do it anyway. I'll go to Notepad again. Here's Notepad on my Windows client computer, and do a file print. And I'm not going to click print quite yet. What I'm going to do, let's see if I can do this. I'm going to make up a new window and drag it over to the other screen. Take my server and drag it over there so I can watch both of them. We're going to see if this comes up. This job queue should go to 1 on my printer. So if I click print, it just, did you see it? Did you see it? It was there. It went to jobs in the queue to 1 and then it printed. So it went really, really fast, but this switched from a 0 to a 1 and then back to a 0 again. So you can watch jobs that are going in there. And most of the time, just like this one's sitting at 0, it sits at 0 most of the day. And it says the printer was, the job was sent to the printer. So we're good. Okay, now what we're going to do is kind of go with some of the advanced things. Is we're going to create it so we can do pooling of our printer. So kind of going back to my drawing over here. So this one printer object is going to point to 2 different physical printers. I'm going to try this. I've never worked with it in these classrooms this way. So I'm going to try it. And this is actually our classroom. This is the classroom next door to us. Now, ideally, they'd be physically next to each other, not in different rooms, but we're going to try to do this. So I am going to go to my server. Come on. Where did my server go? Oh, that's my server. I have to switch screens. Go to my server, and I want to go to this printer object right here. And this is the one I'm working with. And I want to create a new printer. I just want to configure a new way of it printing to another location. So I want to go over to ports. And you can see that you have these TCP/IP ports, and one is pointing to 192.168.192.117. Well, I want to add a new port. So I'm going to add a port to this printer. And it's going to be a TCP/IP port. And I click on new port. And then click next. And I'm going to type in 172.16.33.229.
Did you name the new port?
Did I what?
Did you give the new port a name?
No. No, let me back up completely. Cancel, cancel, cancel. I want to add another direction to this. I want this to go to 2 different physical places. So I'm going to right click on it and go to properties. I go to the ports tab and I want to add a port. And I want to add a TCP/IP port. I want to point to another physical location. So I click on new port, next. And the IP address is 172.16.33.229. Now it's on a completely different network. I should still be able to connect to it. And it looks like I can. That's a good thing. And it says I can find this device. And I click finish. And this should close. I guess I have to close it. I thought, whatever. If you notice now, though, it's now just pointing to that printer. So right now, if I printed, now the Windows client person over here doesn't know any difference. So if I went over here and I went to print right now, file print, it would only go to that. This is getting really confusing as far as virtual machines. Let me try to bring this back together. Bring that over here. Make that stay. Bring my server back over here. Okay. So this client doesn't know any difference. So if I did file print, it would just go to this new location. And that's not what I want. I don't want it just to go to a new location. I want it to go to both. So I click on this one, and it only lets you choose one. Well, that's because you have to go on the bottom and enable printer pooling. If you don't enable printer pooling, you can only choose one destination for that printer object to point to. So it can either go to here or to here, but not to both. If I choose pooling, it's going to do both, which is pretty cool. And then I can click apply. Now, Bob, can I ask a favor of you? Can you go over to that printer and push the big green button on top? And that should take it offline. Does it say offline? Perfect. So now I'm on Windows 7 and I say, okay, I want to print, and I'm printing to this classroom server, to this classroom printer, because it's L119 whatever, and I click print. And it says, oh, the printer's offline. Oh, come on. I don't know if it went to my other printer or not. Don't I have it pooling on there? Properties, ports, pooling. Well, let me just check. Okay, so I might just list that one off. Let me go to the next room and see if it's printed over there. Oh, I'm going to check. Oh, you know what? I think they just locked the room. see a print document on there, and the room is locked.
Is it yours? We can have someone watch the printers.
Here it is. Yeah, watch if it's. And it is my document. So, it was successful. I guess it just tells you the status of one of the printers that are offline. Normally, you don't do it. You know, offline is definitely a good thing, but it's when you have lots and lots of print jobs to an area that you'd have 2 or 3 printers and just kind of keep going. And
So would that print to both printers if they were both online?
no, definitely not. Definitely not. It is not a duplicate thing. It's a one or the other, and you can't choose. You have no control over which one's going to go to. So,
Does it go to the same one every time?
no.
You don't want to. What? So like if you printed off like 56 pages on one job. And like go
The
to
job goes to a printer.
Okay.
The job goes to a printer, and that's an excellent example. So somebody prints off 56 pages. The next person only wants to print 1 page. So 50, or you have 10 people that want to print 1 page, and you have one person printing 56. The 56 go there, and the 10 one-page ones go over there. And again, they're typically not in different rooms. They're literally next to each other. And you just go grab your print job. So, okay. So can you put that little green button back on again? So with that, I'm going to take off that property, so I'm not going to randomly print in the next classroom. So I'm going to click under ports again, and I'm going to turn off printer pooling. Then I'm only going to select our classroom, which is 117, 192, 117. Now I'll click OK. So from now on, and again, the client doesn't know the difference. It can't tell what it's doing. It's just going to print to, the server, and the server manages the direction of it. So, okay. So now, let's see. Let's change some rights on this now, as long as we're here. So I'm going to go over here to the printer again, and I'm going to properties of it, and I'm going to work with the advanced. I'm going to go underneath advanced right now, and I'm going to say it's available to print from, and it's all day, 12 a.m. to 12 a.m. is all day. Let's do 12 a.m. to 12 p.m., which is basically the morning, and then I go ahead and click OK. So now I should be able to print in the mornings. So if I'm on a Windows computer right now, and again, I don't know the difference, I go to File, Print, and I click Print, and it just gives them a message. Over here in my server, I'm going to end up having this job sitting in the queue. So it's not going to print anything. And it's just going to be a paused state. Let's see here. I'd have to manage it over here. Well, actually, as a user, I can manage it as well. Oh, go back to the server. Sorry, I'm bouncing around. Let's go to the actual printer object in the control panel. Devices and printers. Why can't I see my jobs? Hang on a second. I'm thinking here. Oh, this is it. Yeah. So I'm Andrew. I could, at this point, I could pause my job, cancel my job, see the properties of it. But it's just going to be sitting here until midnight, and then it's going to print all these jobs off. Anything that's held. So that's one thing. So I'm Andrew, so I can cancel this job. So now the job's not going to be there anymore. Something else I can control is who is able to print. So I'm going to click back on this printer again and go to the HP 4100, and I go under security. And right now everyone can print. Well, I'm going to remove everyone, and I'm just going to add, oh, I don't know, Alexis, or the IS manager. That's what I'm going to add, is the IS manager. And the IS manager can print. So now if I try to go to print, it doesn't let me print. The operation was canceled. So I've got to file print. I don't have that printer anymore because I don't have the ability to print. It's just not going to show up a printer that I don't have access to. What I could do then, though, sort of backside here, is go to Tools, Users, and Computers, and I forgot where Andrew even is. Here's Andrew. I'm going to take Andrew, I'm going to add him to a group called the IS Manager. Now we'll see how long this takes. Oh, it's showing there. Oh, it is back. Okay, no, I still can't print though. Don't have permission. Waiting, waiting. Oh, come on. Access denied. Come on. I can log out, log back in, but eventually over time, oh, that's interesting. Time. Access is denied. It would take several minutes for it to update and I'd be able to print. Here, I'm going to log off. Oh, sticky note. I don't want to go sticky note. I'm going to Notepad. And I should be able to print. Access denied. Still? Let's take a look at my printer. I think I said IS Manager, didn't I? Security, IS Manager can print. And I made Andrew a member of, oh, hang on. I bet you I didn't change the time. That would make a difference. Lots of restrictions. Now I should be able to print to it, because it doesn't say access denied anymore. So one reason is because I wasn't part of the group. The other reason was because of the time restrictions. So going back, let me take him out of the group. And now he should be able to print again. And da 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 da. Well, it does work that way. So sorry for all the time, but you can restrict it by the user or by the time, or however you want to restrict it that way. So go ahead and take a break. I didn't realize it was almost 7 already. So go ahead and take a break, and we will come back and finish up a couple things with printing, and then get into the final exam review. So next thing we're going to talk about is having multiple printer objects pointing to the same physical printer for various reasons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the current printer, and I'm going to go and rename it to be HP 4100 low for low priority. Or, no, you know what? Common, for common use. For sharing, I'm going to, existing connections will be just recreate again. Yes, that's fine. And for sharing, I'm going to put, this is the common one. I'm going to list in the directory, and I'm going to click OK. Oh, I should have gone under properties and make sure I removed all of the restrictions. Sharing ports, advanced, always available. And security, I want to put everyone back on. And everyone can print. And I'll get rid of the manager. So everyone can print. Okay, so that's back to the default. So it's just a common everyday printer. You wouldn't normally call it common, but just trying to emphasize the differences here. So now I do want to add another printer. And I'm going to point it to the exact same IP address, 172.16.192.117. If you notice, it's going to add a dash or underscore 1 because there's already one existing that's called that port name. So just leave it. Just let it do whatever it wants to do. We can put a .2, -3, -4, whatever. And that's going to go and say, hey, there's an HP 4100 printer there. And that is true. But I'm going to call it L119-HP 4100-high priority. Just for demonstration. I'm going to put the share name as the exact same thing. And then I click next, and next, and next. So now I have two printers. One's a common one, and one's a high priority one. So the common one, I'm leaving it for everyone. It's available 24 hours a day. It's open to everyone, but the priority is low. To see the priority, I can click on Properties and then go to Advanced. And this is where you see priority. Priority 1 is the lowest. It goes from 1 to 99. So if I click cancel on this, I can make a high priority one as well. And then I go to Properties. And I'm just curious, what if it's not listed in the directory, which is good. Under Advanced, I want to make it high priority, so priority 99. This is an example then where maybe you want to put it just for the managers or just specific, maybe just for the president. Maybe I'll do that. So I'm going to remove everyone and I'm going to add the president. And so the president, no matter what, is always going to get priority in the printing. So just using it as an example. So now I'm back to my Windows computer. I do need to redo my printer though. Let's remove this printer. And we're going to go ahead and add it back, add a printer back, add a network printer. And only the common one shows up because I don't have rights to it, but also because it's listed in directory. And so I can't, that's what I'm going to print to. So that's just what it is. And so now that's my common everyday old printer, low priority printer. Let me go ahead and log in as the president now, who is Madison. Let's switch the user, other user. And it has to go through creating a profile. And now I'm going to go to Devices and Printers. I want to add a printer here, a network printer. It's still going to show the common one, but I should have access to the other one. So the printer I have isn't listed. So I can search for the share name, and or I can browse. I'm not. Oh, I didn't have it on, so now it takes another restart to turn it on. And it's not going to show up until I do it again. Win7, yeah, it's not going to show up my server. So I'd have to type it in. But I should have access to //. The server is 2012-1 /, and now, you know, it actually shows up both of the shares. Listing in the directory will make it easier to see, so it pops up on that first list, but I still should have access to the high priority one because I am Madison, the president. And I get it installs the driver that's on the network, and I click next, and I click finish, and I should be able to print in Notepad saying I am the president. And if I went to print and somebody else had another print job, several print jobs ahead of me, I'd be bumped to the next available slot. And so I have high priority. It's just one example. You could do it by, you know, department again. Only, you know, certain departments can print. Whatever you want to put. So in this case, I made the president. So you can't make the president have high priority. What you have to do is you make a printer object high priority. Even though it's pointing to the same physical printer, you have two different objects pointing to it. So I have, these are the same locations. They're just different configurations. And then you have to allow or deny people having access to those objects to be able to print what you want them to print or when you want them to print. So does that make any sense? Okay. The last thing I want to talk about as far as printing goes, and then we'll ask for any questions, is right now, so far, the users have had to go in and add a device, search for it, even if they just have to click Add Printer and to click Add Next, and it's right there for them, but they still have to add it. And in addition, it did, you know, it's supposed to happen, I'm not sure why mine isn't anymore, about prompting for administrator access. And you don't want that to happen. So I'm going to remove this device, and I'm going to show you a different way of deploying the printer, of having it happen automatically. It's a really cool feature. And I'm going to use the common one because that applies to everyone. So this common printer applies to everyone, not just the high priority one. And what I'm going to do is, hang on, let's see here. I have to check something. Okay, so now I'm going to show the process of installing it automatically. So I'm going to use the printer object that I have right here, the common one, because it applies to everyone. I can right click on it. I can deploy it with a group policy. And this is kind of an automated way right through the print management. We can do it through group policies, which I'll show you where the object is. But it's kind of nice doing it right from here because you don't have to like navigate through the group policy editor. But I will show you where that goes. So I want to deploy this using group policy. And I don't have any of my default ones. I don't have any like my Paul one or whatever. So I'm going to use my default domain policy. This is going back to the main overall policy, which is applied to everybody. And I'm going to click OK. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply it to all the users and all the PCs. So I'm going to add this printer to basically everything in the domain. So when you log in, you should get this printer. And I'm going to click Add. Make sure you click Add. It's really easy to say, okay, I'm going to deploy it to these two things, and you click OK, and nothing happens. So you have to click Add to show up in this list. Yes?
No window before that, you had all of those folders?
If I right click and I do deploy, okay, yep.
Browse.
Browse.
What did you do here?
I chose the default domain policy. Yes, because I could have policies underneath other places or whatever, but this is my default domain policy. I want it to apply to everybody. If you wanted it just to apply to somebody within a department, then you'd go underneath HR and you'd have to have a policy underneath HR. So let me, in fact, go back that direction. Let's go back to Server Manager and go to Tools, Group Policy Management, GOPA, let's make HR. Let's create and link a GPO to that. GPO. HR-GPO. So there's a group policy that deals with human resources. I'm not going to edit anything on it, okay? Just kind of leaving it over there. So let's go back to my printer configuration. And if I right-click and I go to Properties, no, I don't want to go to Properties. Sorry, right-click, Deploy with a group policy. When I browse, I should see that group policy underneath Human Resources then. So I want it only to apply to HR, say. Okay? I want HR to have an HR printer. I want accounting to have an accounting printer. So that's a pretty typical way of doing it. I don't want to do that, though. For my example, I want everybody to have the same printer. And then whole company, we're a one-room company. And so I choose the common one for my default, and then I'm going to apply it to users and computers, and I click Add. And again, that add is, I have forgotten the add so many times in my life, and then really frustrated why it's not deployed. You have to click Add. And then you click OK. And now you're really done. It says it's completed. So if I switch back over to my Windows 7 computer, it's a group policy thing, which means that the person would have to log out and log back in, or wait the 15 minutes, a half an hour, or whatever for it to be triggered. Or we can force it to be triggered by doing a GP update force. GP update in a command prompt to force, and it should run my group policies. And there's my printer. So the user doesn't have to do anything with it. They just are there. So they get that printer every time. And as you can see, I could make it by department. So if you're in Human Resources, you get the HR printer. If you're in the President's office, you get the President's office. So you get your printer based on, you know, that group policy. Tyler, you have a question?
So what is so the user would have to run this command prompt?
Well, if you wanted them to happen right away.
Okay.
But you know what they would really do here. In fact, let me remove the device. But what they would do is you probably wouldn't tell them to go to the command prompt and do that. Actually, I probably can't even remove it. Yeah, I can't even remove it. Okay, let's log as somebody else. Let's log as a brand new person. So don't save that. I'm going to log in as somebody I haven't logged in as yet, which I can't think of who that would be. Let's do, Sarah. Brand new person, never been touched, shouldn't have a printer, right? Okay. And there's my printer. So the group policy does it when you log in. I'm just saying for our sake, if you don't want to do the log out, log in, you can do a GP update. The likelihood of you walking a user through that is probably pretty low. I would probably have the user just log off and log back in to have the new printer. They would lose their work, unfortunately, or they have to save their work, but they could still do it. You can also remove printers through group policy objects. So if I go back to my server here, and this is the group policy I want to work with, so I click on the default domain policy. If I click, I'll remove all, and I check these two boxes. So I'm going to apply this to all of it. Let's see. No. Back up. Let's see. Hang on 1 second here. What do I have to do here? This is a weird step. Okay. So I right click, deploy with group policy, remove all. I still have to click to group policy here. Let me think. I do this, remove all, and then click. Oh, no, I have to check this. Okay. Then I click apply. Yes, that's what I have to do. So I check the default domain policy with that printer name and this and apply, but nothing's in here. It should remove it from the user. So we're going to try that, and I could log off and log back on, or I could use the command prompt. and you can remove printers from people too. So if there was a printer that was deployed and it's just not around anymore, or you don't want anybody to have it, it's like, oh my word, I just deployed a 3D printer to everybody in the company and now everybody's printing chess pieces, you know, you could go and delete the printer from everybody's computer and then go back and just give it to the, you know, whatever, the design team or whatever. So
if you don't use a group policy, you have to manually look for the printer for each user?
yeah. Yeah, so every user would have to go into here and say add printer, add a network printer. It would be there for them, so it's pretty easy, but then they have to click next, next, or whatever, and it would actually prompt them for administrator access as well if you deny them rights to it. So that's where group policies come in. Let me show you where that is in group policies, though. You know, just for curiosity's sake, you know, I can go through, you know, the print manager and say deploy, you know, do this whole process. Where this exists, let me get back to group policy, server tools, group policy management, and let's see, it's under GOPA. Default domain policy is what I'm working with. It is under, I want to edit it. I did computers and users. It's under both of these in this case. It's under policies, Windows settings, and then deployed printers. So this is where this would be for here, and it'd be for here for the computer, for the users policies. So if you wanted to do it from here, you could. I can right click and say I want to deploy a printer. And now again, this is the default domain group policy, so it's going to affect everybody. You just have to know the full name. You can't, you can browse, well, let's see if you can browse for it. I don't see, the network stuff isn't showing up. Oh, it is now. It wasn't before. 2012, and there's the name. Otherwise, you would have to type in the name, / 2012 -1 /L119 -HP 4100 common, you know, and then have to add it. But when you do that, this is what it looks like. So now that it's out in the deployed area, once the user, if I spelled everything right, they get their printer. So you can do it from here, and then if I remove it, I'm actually removing the printer. It should go away as well. So you can do it through the group policy object editor, or just right click and say deploy using this group policy object. And now it's gone. So it's kind of fun. Group policies are going to be the way that you're going to deploy printers. You're not going to have every user go through the process of adding a printer. You know, it'd probably be the exception type thing. Like, you know, maybe there'd be the one printer or something that you want to connect to, maybe the color printer or something, but, you know, probably deploying it using group policies. So. Okay, any other questions about printers? So we're going to review the final. So I'm going to shut down this, well, this minimize it. I don't need to shut it down, I suppose. The final exam. It's slightly, ever so slightly different from the original one that I gave you. It is on the link out there on Blackboard. It's under learning plans. I did modify a couple things, tweaked a couple things here and there, and I'm looking for your feedback, input, things that I should add that we have covered in class but we didn't do, in that it's not being evaluated, or vice versa. So it's like, when did we cover that? And then, you know, just making sure it's clear as far as the expectations. So again, you'll have 8 hours, essentially a maximum of 8 hours to work on this. You should not work on the exam outside the class time. So if you don't get done that first class period, you're going to take it home with you, but I'm just asking you not to work on it at home. So please just work on the class. Is there a way of me knowing? No, there's not. It's just, be honest. Just work on it in the class. Do not use the internet for research during the exam. Once it begins, then you shouldn't be using internet anymore. You can use the internet up to that point. After that, it's just reviewing your notes. Also, do not communicate with others about the exam. Like, oh man, how did you do that again? Once the exam starts, you have 2 weeks, this week and next week, to ask me and each other and the internet any question that you want. But once it begins, I really, really want you to do your own work. Things you can bring to the final are your notes. Also, feel free to bring an MP3 player with music on it or whatever. Just don't play it loud to distract the people around you. But if you feel more comfortable with that, or just noise canceling ones or whatever, just feel free to do that. So, okay. Now we get into what you should be doing. So, you're going to install this is the wrong one. Wrong one. That is the old one. But this is the one that should be linked to Blackboard. It should say B on there. So all the stuff at the top is the same. So obviously, okay, for the servers. So you're going to come in with basically the files that I've given you, which are ISO images of Windows Server 2012, an ISO image of Windows 7, and an ISO image of Windows 8. So, and that's it. And then a blank hard drive. Well, you can have stuff on the hard drive, I don't care, whatever. But you're going to newly create and install Windows Server 2012 R2. You're going to use Standard Edition Full, which means like with the GUI, on a virtual machine. You're going to name it DC1, and you're going to give it an IP address of 192.168.118.21. The default gateway is going to be 118.2. If we looked at our virtual environment, that is the router, and that's also going to be your DNS server. You're going to set the correct time zone, you're going to install VMware tools, and you're going to make it a domain controller for a new domain called gopa.com. Questions on that? And feel free to print this off, make notes on it, type notes right on here, whatever you want to do. This is yours to use as much as you want. Okay, you're then going to install a second server, which is 2012 R2 Standard Core on a virtual machine. You're going to name it DC2. You're going to give it an IP address of 118.22, pointing the default gateway also to 118.2, but the DNS server, you're going to point back to the first server as your DNS. You're going to set the correct time zone, install VMware tools, and then you're going to use Server Manager on DC1 to make DC2 a domain controller in an existing domain called gopa.com. And we did this. So then you're going to install Windows Server 2012 R2 Server Core as a Hyper-V VM on DC1. And I'm debating whether I should do it on there or on DC2. Maybe we'll do it on DC2 just for fun. Because then you have to do everything remotely through DC1. Yeah, we'll do that. You're going to name that server IIS. The network type is going to be external. Its IP address is going to be 192.168.118.23. Its default gateway is also going to be 118.2. And it's going to point its DNS to 118.21. On this Windows server, you're going to give it a correct time zone. And that's it. You're not actually going to install any roles on it. You're just going to call it IIS, but not install any roles on it. We've installed Hyper-V virtual machines. You're going to have to know what you have to do to this machine, though, to make it able to support a Hyper-V virtual machine. So it's not in the notes here, but what things do you have to do? You remember? Don't remember? A couple things that you have to do on the server itself.
What server are we talking about?
This would be DC2. It's going to be on the server you're going to put Hyper-V on. So under VM settings, you have to make a couple changes. The first one is you have to give it more memory, because 2 gigs is not enough for itself and for the virtual machine.
So is this where we're putting a virtual machine on a virtual server?
Yes, yes, yes. We did it last week.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
7 days ago, but it seemed like eternity. Then also under processor, you have to enable both of these virtualization options. They're grayed out right now because the server's running. You have to do this while the server's off. So the first step is to give it more memory. The second step is to enable both these virtualization settings underneath processors. The third option is under options. You have to change this from Server 2012 to Hyper-V.
How much RAM is enough RAM?
Excellent question. I'm thinking 4 gigs will be fine, because you're probably going to allocate probably 2 gigs to your new one. So I'd probably choose 4. We have a ton of RAM on these computers, so you could go to 6 if you wanted to. But I think 4 is going to be pretty good, because we're really not putting any, and it's a server core installation, so it's probably not even going to require a full 2 gigs. So anyway, moving back to the, okay, and that's working. So that's working with Hyper-V. Okay, the clients. So I'm going to have you create Windows 8.1. You're going to install 2 of these. One of them is going to be called computer name 8.8 Win 8-1, and create another one called Win 8-2. You know what? I really want you to create 3 virtual machines, but Windows 7 really does perform better. So I'm going to change this. Sorry. And have you create 2 Windows 7 virtual machines. So you're still creating 3 virtual machines, 1 Windows 8 and 2 Windows 7s. This is faster logging in on Windows 7 for the things we're working with. So we do need a Windows 8 computer though, because we need to install and configure RSAT on Windows 8.1 to administer GOPA domain from a Windows 8 computer. So from your Windows 8 client, you should be able to manage all 3 of your servers. And it'll be the server, it'll be DC1, DC2, and IIS are the 3 servers you should be able to administer from your Windows 8 computer. And in fact, then from Windows 8, you're going to install the IIS role on your IIS server. And you're going to use all the defaults if it asks for anything. I'm not even sure what's going to even ask you. It doesn't matter because you're really not going to run it. Okay, organizational units. Now we get to create organizations for each of the 6 departments in our GOPA organization. Include sub-organizational units for sales, operations, and accounts receivables and accounts payable. But you can argue, but I don't think that should be an organization. It's just arbitrary. I'm just saying create this stuff, and this is what I'm looking for, so that not everybody implements this differently. So when I look through it, I'm looking for everybody has the same structure. You're also going to create an organizational unit at the root of GOPA for Arthur Andersen. If you remember, underneath our organizational unit, it's going to look like it's underneath finance, and it really could be. We're just going to put it under accounting. We're just going to put it at the root, though. I'm just saying put Arthur Andersen at the root. Then for users, I want you to use templates. for each top level department that include the department information, and then create all the users in the GOPA except Arthur Andersen. So what I'm saying here is for accounting, you're going to create a template, a user template for accounting, and then for department name, you're going to put accounting, and maybe the 4th floor and the phone number for accounting is 123. I don't know, whatever. Then you're going to create all the accounting people using that template. Then you're going to create a template for all of operations, not for first shift, second shift, third shift, but for all of operations, and create all those people using that template and so on. Then you're going to do some user management, very basic stuff. We're going to enable that Andrew can only log on to Windows 8.1 computer. Olivia can either log on to Win 8.1 or Win 7-2. So those 2 computers, and John can only log on from Windows 7-1. Now remember these things later on as you start testing things. If also you log in as somebody and you can't, you have to remember, oh yeah, I disabled them or whatever. So Hannah can only log in from 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. And you know what? I'm going to change that for you people. From 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. Which during the class, then they should not be able to log in. But should give you time restrictions. Anthony's account is disabled. He's out on vacation, whatever. And Jess's account will expire December 31st, 2015. So basic type user configuration. Then something we did not practice, but we did cover in class, and you have 2 weeks to kind of review, is I want you to bulk add all the Arthur Andersen users. You have 3 ways of doing that. You can use the the CSV files, so it's a comma separated values, or using LDIF, or using the DS commands. So there's really good sections on that that's available, and we can review that later on if you want. But there's a couple different ways of bulk adding people, and we did look at that, didn't we? We looked at the videos for that, I think, or I don't know if I had you do it. Elliot, do you remember that all? Did we talk about that? We didn't do it, but did I talk about it though? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to give you a little time to think about this. I'm going to do some research on this. So it's a little outside the scope, but we'll see. To Arthur Andersen organization. To the Arthur Andersen OU. So there's a bunch of users under Arthur Andersen way in the corner. We're going to try to bulk add that. So.
Does that mean add them all at once?
Yep. Yep, add them all at once. You know what? Maybe we'll do extra credit. Because we didn't do it in class. If you figure it out and you do it, you get extra points. Okay. Therefore, it's not going to put any stress on you because we didn't do it in class. Anyway, okay. Groups. Create 6 groups, 1 for each 6 of the departments. Put all the employees in their groups. Create a group for each department manager then. So we have, just like we've done before, we have an HR manager, an IS manager, whatever. And the president is considered a manager as well. Put all their managers in their appropriate manager group. So Joshua is the IS manager or whatever. And then create a company managers group that includes all the other department managers. And that we've done. So there's a manager of the manager groups. Okay? I'm good with that. Okay. The file system then. You're going to create a D drive on our server. So you're adding a separate hard drive to your server. You're going to call it, give it the letter D. So remember, that takes some manipulation to move the drive letters around. And you're going to name it data. You're going to make it 500 gigabytes in size. You're going to create 6 directories, one for each of your 6 main departments, HR, IS, blah, blah, blah. There's going to be a managers folder within each department for that department manager. You're also going to create a shared folder. Within the shared folder is going to be a managers folder only for all the company managers, which is that managers group. And then also you're going to have a policies folder for everyone to see, but only HR users to update the content. So in the first example, no one can even see the managers folder except the managers. In the second one, the policies folder, I should capitalize that, policies folder, everyone can see, but only the HR people can update. You're going to secure each of the folders appropriately. You know, HR has access to HR. The HR manager has access to the HR manager folder, but the rest of the HR people can't see it. And then the whole policies and managers folder. So hopefully that's clear as far as what's expected. So ensure that all users will be able to see the folders, will not be able to see the folders they do not have access to. I should not be seeing folders and clicking on it and being told, sorry, you don't have access to it. Make sure I don't even see it. Create a share for the data volume for all users to share. So you're creating a share then, so that the people can log on from their Windows computers and be able to then access those things through the shares. At the end of the, you'll demonstrate you log in as several people and show that people have access. So I'm going to say, okay, log in as Alexis. Let's see what she can see. Let's log in as Sarah. Let's see what she can see. Let's log in as Joshua. What can he see? What should he see? On and on and on. So, okay. Group policies. We've done all these in class. Set up and test account lockout on the entire GOPA domain so that the user's accounts are locked after 3 invalid attempts. So I should be able to log in 3 times and I should get a message saying your account is locked. Set the default password policy to remember the last 15 passwords and to force passwords to be changed every 7 days. I'm actually going to change that to 10 days because if you go to the second week of your final, everybody's password will be expired. And I don't want that to be the case. So set up and test the following security options. You want to disable the display the user information when session is locked. So when the session is locked, I don't want to see who's logged in. Do not display the last user login. I don't want to see that Tom was the last person to log in. I want to be a blank username and password field. I also do not want to enter the Control-Delete. And I do want to be notified when my password is about to expire. I don't like being surprised, but your password's expired. Change it now. Also, when the timeout expires, the logon time expires, I want to force the log off. So you get logged off. Set up and test drive map policy preferences to have the F drive point to the data share. We did do that, didn't we, in here? Remember doing that with drive mappings? Did we do? I'm doing this, I have several sections, and I'm just making sure. Do you remember that? Let's see if I can find it real quick. Oh, that's hard to say. It probably would run in the group policy sections, actually, when I think of it. But this is not one that I have memorized, but let's see if I can find it. So if I look under users, it is under, I believe, administrative templates and shared, no, network. No, hang on a second. I should probably look it up before I confuse everybody. Yeah, hang on. Under, okay, users, user configuration, preferences, user configuration preferences. And then under preferences, it's Windows settings, and then drive maps. So then we went to a new drive map, and then a mapped drive, if you remember this at all. And then I put replace. That's what I choose. The default is update. It's not going to make any difference in our scenario. We don't have to worry about it. The location is going to be your share. Actually, I'm just going to go right to the share. So it's going to be / S 2012-1 / and it should be data. I'm not sure if that's what it's going to be. And I want to use the drive letter F. I can label it also as data. And I should be able to apply it. And then click OK. So I'm going to go to my Windows 7 computer. And I'll open up my drives. And we'll see if it works. Oh, no, I want to do CMD. What's that?
It does run from there.
Oh, does it run from there? Can you do a /force though?
Yep.
How do you do that then?
You just take
GP
them,
update up
/force.
from here?
Good for me anyway. No. Maybe I could run dialogue.
Yeah. I think, anyway. GP update /force. I don't even know what my share is offhand. I was just guessing. And it didn't work. So, oh, only during logon. So log off. Okay, I'll do a log off. Oh, that's probably because I applied everything else to it. Yeah, that did. Something was wrong. 2012-1 data. That may not even be my share. Oh, I don't even have a D drive at all. So I must have reverted way back in my snapshots. But I'm that would be the syntax for it though. So that's what you should be calling it. That's what you'd be calling your share as data. And so that should be the syntax for it. Okay. Moving back. And you can practice this stuff as much time as you want. So at the end of the final, you're going to demonstrate that you can unlock an account. I think we have everything disabled on our local machines. So I really don't need to include that anymore. So you can configure the entire print system so you can print the classroom printer from the Windows, because of speed, I'm going to change it to 7. From the Windows 7 client, we did the exact same thing today. Have the printer automatically configured as a default printer on your client using group policies, and then print a text document from Windows 7 client that includes your name on it. And actually, you did that today. So you're going to set up the printing system and then make sure that Windows 7 automatically gets the printer, and then you can print. So no matter who I log in as, I should have a drive mapping to my F drive, and I should have the printer configured if your group policies are working correctly.
You need to know that IP address of the printer is?
It's the same. It's in your notes right now. It's. I mean, it's on today's learning plan. It's 172.16, 192, 117. And I can put that on there. That's nothing secret. Classroom printer, 172.16.192.117. I'm gonna put any client. So if you have your group policies configured, it's going to set up the printer automatically on any client, whether it's Windows 7.1 or 7.2 or 8.1. It's just going to get installed automatically. Anything else you want to see added onto here? Like, hey, we did this. This was kind of fun, and you're not even asking about it.
Maybe if we had more time. No.
You have 2 weeks.
No, I'm talking about time to do it, just to actually install the OS and everything. It's gonna be,
Anything
Very
else?
silently not talking about the test.
yeah. Just
Just looking at each other.
installing it.
Okay, anything else you don't think should be on the exam? So you're doing a full server, you're doing a GUI install, a server core install, and a Hyper-V install. You're doing a client install, you're joining everything under a domain, you're creating organizational units, groups, and users. You're doing user management, you're setting up a file system and you're securing it, and you're setting up group policies to set up security, and you're setting up a printer. I mean, it's kind of what we covered this semester. Okay, any clarifications? I am not deliberately trying to trick you or keep you in the dark about anything. I wrote things out kind of, they appeared clear to me, but is anything kind of like, what are you expecting here type questions?
Same organizational chart.
Yes, yes, yep, yes, you're using GOPA.
Okay. And
Excellent question. So
the accounts receivable and accounts payable on one bullet point, or does that mean if there's one thing?
using GOPA,
Oh, I think.
create OUs for each of the 6 departments, and then I just want you creating a couple sub OUs.
Never mind. I see. Cool.
You said, I think you said, when we're doing this, once we have the server up and RSAT installed, everything else you want done from the Windows 8 client?
That doesn't matter. Where's that RSAT thing here?
An issue with
I know, me too.
So
getting that to work,
get this to work
right?
so you can administer all 3 of your servers, but then you will be installing the ISS role on the IIS server. And then what are the defaults are. I don't even care what you choose. You can choose anything you want. It doesn't matter. But maybe I will.
We can drag over to the actual, like,
Getting,
thing. I don't know what this one is. There's 4.
Yeah, the RSAT is actually a service pack. It's a Windows update. Weird. I don't know why it's not a product. You drag it over to your desktop. You double click on it and it says it's going to install this service pack. It does not hurt to take snapshots along the way. I probably wouldn't take the time to shut down the server, take a snapshot, and bring it back up every step along the way. But it's probably not a bad idea. Like, hey, I'm getting into the next section. Let me take a snapshot here, snapshot here. Oh, wait a second. Something went really bad with my users. Let me go back to another snapshot. It's not, we are using snapshots so you can go back in time and practice. You know, during the final, you're not going to really need that. But it's not a bad safety net. You know, like during the creation of users, oh, I did all my users wrong. You know, then you could go back to a state prior to that if you wanted to. But there really isn't a huge need for it, because even worst case, you go through and delete all the users manually. It's not a bad idea though. Yeah, a couple options for next week are, in fact, I have a faster drive. I could just go through the whole thing and I probably could get it done. And I have scripts to help out in some areas like creating users and things, that I could do the whole thing. That'd be the point though where you would not be able to keep up. I mean, you could not do it. You would be looking at your notes and reviewing the notes, and I could probably just be recording at the same time so you could review the recording type thing. So that's one option. Another option is, okay, what do you want to review? Let's go through this section and let's practice this then. It's kind of up to you what you want. I'm not sure if we'll have time for both. We might, because this does go really, really fast on this solid state drive. And especially with the scripts and things that I have, I can really automate a lot of things. So there might be time at the end to do it.